Mexicanos Unidos en Defensa del Pueblo was born 10 years ago as a unified response against the repressive treatment of the Mexican community in Fallbrook, California. Mexican and Chicano youth felt a political organization dedicated to defending the democratic, civil, and human rights of the Mexican community was necessary, especially after a well-known community leader was beaten at his home by local sheriffs. The 90s gave witness to repressive legislation aimed at the Mexican population of California. Among this legislation was a proposition which would undo one of the monumental gains by the Chicano movement of the 60s, Proposition 227. Since most of the members of Mexicanos Unidos en Defensa del Pueblo were professionals and college students, we were well aware of what this legislation would do to our communities. The organization felt that serious actions should be taken. In 1998, a campaign was launched in Oceanside, California, where that school district dared to be the example of what 227 should be, English only. With MUDP's help, parents mobilized, became active in school meetings.
Nosotros sabemos que la mayoría de nuestros niños se están atrasando en estos programas. We know as parents that our children are getting behind on these programs. And también sabemos que estos programas son experimentos. We know that these programs are experiments. So lo que queremos, what we want is our rights to choose, nuestro derecho de escoger los programas que queremos, y es lo que queremos que esta señorita nos conteste. ¿Por qué no se le está permitiendo al padre de escoger? Why are you not letting us choose the program that we want for our kids?
Engage in legal forms of democratic struggle by contacting lawyers, the Office of Civil Rights, and the State Office of Education. A formal complaint was filed on behalf of the parents and their group called Coalición Unidos en la Educación de Nuestros Niños. Their efforts were confirmed when the Oceanside School District was found in violation of Proposition 227 itself for their failure to respect parents' rights.
And that's the fundamental contradiction that we have facing us today.
Y esa es una contradicción fundamental que tenemos el día de hoy.
That we are not respecting
Que no
the
estamos,
rights
que no estamos respetando los derechos
of the Latino community.
de la comunidad latina.
The case is currently in the courts. In Vista, California, next to Oceanside, the school opted to keep bilingual programs under Proposition 227's waiver policy. Yet, this program became a target of newly hired directors who wanted to see the programs terminated. Parents had already been well organized and were determined to resist this tendency. But when the school board eliminated funding for school busing, the parents took this action as a last straw, especially since those most affected were Mexican Latino parents. Again, with MUDP's assistance, they stood up.
Hundreds of people very concerned about their children walking on Melrose back and forth. That was so great. I feel so happy and so proud to be Mexican this time.
Is that you're lying to these people, and that you're putting their life in jeopardy, you're endangering them. You ensure that you have plenty of security here when we're here, because you think we're a bunch of animals. Nosotros somos madres y padres que queremos lo mejor para nuestros hijos, y por eso nos quitan muchos impuestos, y todos ustedes están aquí por nuestros hijos, porque nosotros les estamos pagando a todos ustedes de nuestros impuestos.
In Fallbrook, the struggle for an adequate education took shape in a different form. Beginning with no resources whatsoever, MUDP launched the Escuela Popular Rogelio Favela, named after 1.5-year-old Rogelio, who was the son of then MUDP member Enrique Favela. Young Rogelio Achayacar Favela unfortunately passed away in a drowning accident, yet he is remembered best participating in campaigns at his father's side by passing out flyers to the Mexican community. The program first began with ESL classes held in a driveway and incorporated a child care. Later, the organization was fortunate enough to initiate the program in a clubhouse at a local trailer park. Based on critical pedagogy and a thirst for justice, the Escuela Popular Rogelio Favela found enough volunteers to provide ESL classes, tutoring for the children, a health and fitness class, and a summer school for the children. This continued until the Trailer Park Association's governing board began to feel uncomfortable with the program that was teaching its residents to think and act critically. But the Mexican residents, which comprised 80% of the park, were already critical, especially since the previous manager had stolen a large amount of money from the park's treasury. The board made efforts to shut down the programs, and the residents were determined to struggle for their rights. MUDP stood shoulder to shoulder with them through the whole process. They kicked us out of the clubhouse, so we continued the children's programs in the trailer we had previously bought in the park. They then accused us of violating zoning laws since we were catering to over 20 children. So then parents offered the trailers as learning centers to avoid the zoning violations. They then threatened to evict us and the 3 other families which were supporting us, so we again changed plans. After making a call out to local high school students to join the struggle as tutors, we were able to provide tutoring in children's homes. 6 trailers, 3 to 4 children in each trailer, 2 to 3 tutors per trailer. They then threatened us with a $1,000 fine or 6 months in prison for each day of classes that was held. But we did not flinch and continued the program, ready to face the consequences and eventually calling their bluff. This was the situation, and we knew that their fear was based on the potential of a conscious and politicized Mexican community rather than their petty objections. After attempting to get legal help and advice, we were left out on our own since we had no resources. The only way we could change the repressive conditions in the park was to change the board. This meant an MUDP member moving into the park and leading the struggle, which happened in 2001. To do this, we had to sacrifice the tutoring program, since on the day the MUDP member moved in and became a resident of the park, the board signed a new bylaw without the residents' consent, which prohibited tutoring and/or small classes anywhere in the park. This will give the board legal means to evict the MUDP organizer if the program continued. But we felt it was better to sacrifice a short-term goal for a long-term goal, which was to change the conditions once and for all. Besides, struggling alongside the people is the best form of popular education. In the next elections, there were immediate results. We can say that prior to the elections, 0 out of 5 board members were willing to side with the majority of the Mexican residents. The change that was made was a 2-to-3 ratio, 2 on the side of the community, 3 against it. And the following year, we saw a 4-to-1 change. Although we were successful in creating a considerable amount of change, further education and training was needed for the community. For this was the first time the Mexican residents had an advantage in their housing situation. Yet, the representatives, including the MUDP organizer, still lacked the confidence and the skills needed for running a housing association. Despite this fact, there has been a sufficient amount of work done to the point that the possibility of establishing another educational program is wide open. We are planning on making the program bigger and better than it ever was, and to make sure that its doors are never closed again. This program has struggled to be at this point, and we felt it is more important to sacrifice ourselves before we sacrifice the principles of what a just and adequate education should be. Today, after 5 years, the community is still optimistic about the doors opening again, and due to the backwardness of the school system, it is needed now more than ever. We hope you take time to look into this program further, consider the proposal we have made, and take an active role in the struggle for educational justice in our community. Democracy represents itself in different forms, but for us, the highest expression of democracy has always been self-determination, and self-determination begins by determining what type of education our community receives. We can debate the question of education philosophically all we want, but sooner or later we reach the point of action. This is our struggle for democracy. This is the struggle that we have taken on the side of the people.